All right, today we're jumping into the final written argument from a homeowner who, get this, was forced to represent himself against some corporate giants in a super high-stakes foreclosure case. And this isn't just some dry legal document. Oh no, we're talking about a 50-page bombshell aimed right at the Idaho Supreme Court, and it's alleging a full-blown criminal conspiracy. So yeah, let's get into it. So where do we even begin? Well, how about with something you almost never, ever see in a courtroom? Praise from the other side. I mean, think about that. An experienced lawyer for one of the co-defendants went on the record and called the arguments from this homeowner, Jeremy Bass, logical and sound. That's some serious praise, especially for a guy who's not even a lawyer. And yet, here's the twist. The lower court sanctioned him for making those very same arguments. So how does that happen? How can an argument be logical and sound to your opponent, but the court slaps you with a penalty for it? This is where it gets really crazy. This single paradox, it's our doorway into a story of alleged systemic injustice, where just trying to defend your own home can actually get you punished. So let's meet our protagonist here, Jeremy Bass. He's what's called a per force pro se litigant. Now, that's a fancy term, but what it really means is he was turned away by, wait for it, over 125 law firms. 125. So he had absolutely no choice but to become his own lawyer, to fight for the home he's lived in for 20 years. And that final brief we mentioned, that became his weapon.
And it's so important we understand this term, per force pro se. This is not some guy who decided to represent himself to save a few bucks. No. Per force literally means by force of necessity. Bass's whole argument is that the system itself shut him out, systematically excluded him from getting a lawyer. And that created this insane catch-22 that he says the courts then turned around and used against him.
Okay, so let's get into the evidence, right? The first major piece Bass lays out, he basically calls it the smoking gun, the thing that proves the whole foreclosure auction was a sham. He calls it the impossible check. It sounds like a really simple question, doesn't it? I mean, how do you win a public auction? You show up, you bid higher than everyone else, and you win. Simple. But what if the winner already knew the exact final price before the auction even began? Okay, so look at the difference here. In a normal, legit auction, right, you have no idea what the final price is going to be, so you bring extra cash or a cashier's check for more than enough, and you get change back. Makes sense. But in this auction, the winning bidders actually admitted they called the trustee before the sale, and then they just show up with a pre-printed check for the, you guessed it, exact final price. No change needed. And that exact price was $165,346.71. I mean, look at that. It's not a round number. It's not an estimate. It's a pre-printed check for the winning bid down to the penny. I mean, come on. What are the mathematical odds of guessing that exact number? They're basically zero. And this is really the core of his argument. It's not just speculation. A forensic accounting expert looked at all this and basically said, look, you take the pre-auction phone call they admitted to, and you combine it with this exact match check, that's not just suspicious. That's mathematical proof of corruption. The outcome was decided before it even started. Okay, so the check is pretty damning, right? But believe it or not, the next piece of evidence Bass found is, well, it's even more explosive. This one doesn't just suggest fraud. It attacks the entire legal foundation of his opponent's case that they're trying to make to the Supreme Court. So the other side's entire argument boiled down to one legal idea, mootness. Basically, they went to the Supreme Court and said, hey, you know what? This whole appeal is pointless. It's moot. Why? Because we already evicted him. We've got the house. There's nothing left for you to decide. Case closed. And, mootness is a standard legal thing. If the main issue, in this case, who possesses the house, is already over and done with, courts often just say, well, there's nothing for us to do here. So you can see the strategy, right? The opposition just had to get possession of the property before the Supreme Court had a chance to look at the case, and poof, the appeal goes away. But here's the massive question that changes absolutely everything. What if the eviction itself, the very act they used to make the case moot, what if that was illegal? Well, then their whole argument just completely falls apart. And Bass claims he found the proof in their own evidence. And boom, this is the bombshell. Right there in Bass's brief, he points to the official sheriff's document, the one they needed to legally remove him from his home, and it's stamped unserved. That means it was never legally served, which means the eviction was potentially done without any legal authority at all. That's not a civil matter anymore. Bass argues that's criminal trespass, and it was all done, he says, to create a fake defense for their appeal. And this is where the story gets even bigger. Because according to Bass, this wasn't just a one-time thing. He argues it's all part of a much wider pattern, and he starts connecting the dots, not just between the parties involved, but to the court system itself. So his brief lays out these three main pillars of what he calls a systemic problem. First, there's an undisclosed conflict of interest with the judge, who'd actually dealt with Bass and this very same property before. Second, he points to a coordinated pattern, the same law firm, the same bidders showing up over and over again. And third, he talks about how they weaponize the legal process itself to basically trap him in that catch-22 he mentioned. And this chart really shows you what he means by that coordinated pattern. Bass dug up evidence showing this one law firm, Halliday, Watkins and Mann, acting as the trustee in foreclosure after foreclosure. And guess who almost always won the auction? The same two bidders, DPW and Mountain Prime. And look, this wasn't just in Idaho. This was happening across multiple states, a pattern. So when you put all this together, what do you have? Bass's brief isn't just about his house anymore. It's essentially putting the entire justice system on trial. He's asking the Supreme Court, hey, you need to look past this one property and look at the integrity of the whole process. I mean, let's just recap the case he's laid out. You've got mathematical proof of a rigged auction. You've got documentary proof of an illegal eviction. You have evidence pointing to judicial bias. And you have a documented multi-state pattern that looks a whole lot like racketeering. It's a lot. And this is really the bottom line. Bass's final argument completely reframes the case. He's not just saying I was wronged. He's telling the Supreme Court that this isn't about a property dispute at all. He's saying this is an expose of a criminal enterprise that has figured out how to use the law as a weapon and a shield. So in the end, the brief leaves the Idaho Supreme Court, and all of us, really, with a huge question. When the system itself puts up so many barriers that a regular person is forced to fight alone against this huge, coordinated, well-funded machine, what's really on trial? Is it just about one person's house? Or is it about the credibility of the entire justice system?